The Zylaxian trade delegation's ship descended through Earth's atmosphere with all the subtlety of a peacock at a penguin convention. Their vessel, shaped like what could only be described as a floating crystal palace, sparkled with enough luminescence to probably be visible from Mars, because apparently being an advanced spacefaring civilization meant throwing basic concepts like stealth and humility out the window. Ambassador Zylith stood at the front of their delegation, all four arms crossed in various positions that screamed, "I'm better than you," in at least 17 different galaxies. Their crystalline skin refracted light in ways that would make a disco ball jealous, and their expression suggested they'd just smelled something particularly unpleasant, which, given Earth's atmosphere compared to their perfectly engineered one, was probably true. "Remember," Zylith addressed their delegation, mandibles clicking in what passed for a smirk among their species, "these humans still think cryptocurrency was a good idea. This should be easier than extracting nutrients from a bureaucracy slug." Behind them, the delegation's legal team clutched their quantum tablets, containing contracts so complex they'd make a PhD in theoretical physics cry. Hidden within the seemingly straightforward trade agreement were enough loops and hooks to turn Earth's entire silicon industry into their personal piggy bank. Once they figured out why humans still used such primitive metaphors for saving money. Meanwhile, at the United Earth Diplomatic Center, formerly the Gary, Indiana Convention Center, humanity had a sense of humor about these things. The human delegation was preparing in their own way. "Did you bring the coffee?" asked Director Chen, reviewing last-minute briefings. "3 different kinds," responded Ambassador Rodriguez, "including that stuff from Seattle that costs more than some countries' GDPs. "Perfect." Chen nodded, straightening his deliberately cheap-looking tie. "And the other thing?" Rodriguez patted his briefcase with a grin that would have made a shark reconsider its life choices. "All 14 volumes of international trade law, plus that thing we found in the Geneva Convention about extraterrestrial commerce that nobody thought we'd ever need." Outside, the Zylaxian ship was making its final approach, creating a light show that had already sparked 17 different social media trends and a minor religious movement in Nebraska. The human diplomatic team watched through windows that had been specifically tinted to look slightly dirty, a detail that had taken 3 committees and a surprisingly heated debate to approve. "They think we're going to be starstruck by their shiny ship and fancy tech," Chen mused, taking a sip from his coffee cup emblazoned with "World's Okayest Diplomat," just like the Brits thought we'd be impressed by their fancy tea tax. As the ship landed with theatrical precision on the designated pad, which may or may not have been slightly uneven on purpose, the human team shared knowing looks. They'd replaced their usual flags with ones that were just slightly faded, and the welcome banner had a nearly imperceptible coffee stain in one corner. The stage was set. The Zylaxians were about to learn what humans had perfected over millennia of dealing with each other, the art of looking completely, utterly, and deliberately underwhelming. Let the games begin. The conference room buzzed with an energy that could only be described as aggressively polite. Ambassador Zylith's crystalline form caught the fluorescent lighting in a way that cast deliberately distracting patterns across the walls, while their delegation arranged themselves in a formation that somehow made them appear to be looking down at the humans, despite everyone being seated at the same table. "Esteemed Earth representatives," Zylith began, their universal translator adding just enough condescension to make it sound like they were explaining quantum physics to a particularly dim houseplant. "We come bearing opportunities beyond your wildest dreams." The quantum display they activated showed holographic projections of numbers that danced in 4 dimensions, complete with sparkles that were definitely unnecessary but added what the Zylaxians considered a nice touch. Director Chen squinted at it through deliberately unfashionable glasses, while Rodriguez appeared to be taking notes with a pencil that needed sharpening. "As you can see," continued Zylith, gesturing with their upper right arm, while their lower left subtly activated another display sequence, "we're offering you access to our hyperspace shipping lanes, a mere 0.0001% transaction fee per solar rotation, calculated in Zylaxian quantum credits, of course." The human delegation shuffled papers, someone dropping a folder that scattered documents across the floor. As they scrambled to pick them up, none of them appeared to notice the holographic fine print, that briefly flickered, showing the true calculation, 0.0001% compounded every Earth microsecond, with interest calculated in 11 dimensions. Furthermore, chimed in Trade Minister Zix 427, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with barely contained glee. We're willing to share our crystal growth technology. All we ask in return is unlimited access to your silicon reserves. A fair trade, wouldn't you agree? Rodriguez dropped his pencil, fumbling to pick it up while accidentally revealing his notebook filled with doodles of what appeared to be cats wearing spacesuits. The hidden clause in this offer would effectively grant the Zylaxians ownership of every beach on Earth, plus any device containing a semiconductor, which in 2025 meant practically everything more complicated than a spoon. "Oh my," Chen mumbled, wiping his glasses with a tissue that left them slightly smudged. "These numbers are quite impressive." He squinted at a page he was holding upside down. "But perhaps we could discuss the section about mineral rights. Some of these terms are a bit, shall we say, complex for our primitive understanding." The Zylaxian delegation exchanged subtle glances of triumph. Their third arms each twitched in their species equivalent of a high five. This was going even better than expected. Of course, Xylith purred, their translator barely containing their smugness. "Let's start with the simple parts. This clause here merely defines ownership in terms of quantum entanglement rights. Nothing complicated, just sign here, here, and here." They pointed to signature lines that seemed to shift slightly when looked at directly. A human assistant in the back of the room appeared to be having trouble with the coffee machine, creating a distracting series of beeps and hisses. Another was struggling with their tablet, muttering something about needing to update Adobe Reader. "Would you mind if we took a brief recess?" Chen asked, accidentally knocking over a water glass that somehow managed to splash exactly 0 documents. "Our legal team needs to, run some basic calculations, you understand, with our limited computational capabilities." Of course, Xylith gestured magnanimously with all 4 arms. "Take all the time you need. We understand how challenging these concepts must be for your species." As the human delegation filed out of the room, dropping papers and bumping into chairs with almost choreographed clumsiness, the Zylaxians relaxed in their seats, their crystalline forms glowing with satisfaction. "Did you see their confused expressions?" Zix 427 whispered in their native tongue, a sound like wind chimes in a blender. They didn't even notice the causality inversion clause in Section 7. "Humans," Xylith clicked their mandibles in amusement. "Still using paper? How quaint." None of them noticed Rodriguez's brief wink at Chen as they left, or the fact that the coffee machine assistant had somehow managed to photograph every holographic projection, including the ones that were supposed to be invisible to primitive human eyes. After exactly 47 minutes, long enough for the Zylaxians to start feeling smug about how long humans needed for basic comprehension, the conference room doors opened again. The human delegation returned, but they weren't alone. Behind them walked a line of individuals in suits so perfectly pressed they could probably cut diamonds. Each carried a briefcase that looked like it had been specifically designed to contain the condensed weight of 1,000 legal precedents. These were Earth's corporate lawyers, a species more feared than any alien civilization humanity had encountered. "We hope you don't mind," Chen said, still managing to look slightly confused, despite the predatory glint in his eye. "But we invited some friends to help us understand your generous offer." The lead lawyer stepped forward, her suit somehow managing to look both extremely expensive and utterly unmemorable. "Martha Winchester, head of interstellar contract law at Winchester, and Winchester," she announced, her voice carrying the kind of precision that could find a loophole in the laws of physics. "We've taken the liberty of reviewing your proposal." Xylith's upper right arm twitched involuntarily. Something about the way these new humans smiled reminded them of their planet's apex predators. "Let's start with Section 3, Paragraph 17, Subclause Delta," Winchester began, pulling out a document that somehow made their quantum tablets look primitive. "Your definition of solar rotation is quite interesting, particularly when cross-referenced with the Galactic Standard Trade Agreement of 2157, Article 459, which Earth signed last year." Another lawyer stepped forward, pushing up glasses that gleamed ominously under the fluorescent lights. By citing the Proximan Convention on Temporal Commerce, you've inadvertently subjected this entire agreement to Earth's maritime law, specifically the provisions dealing with space-time distortions in international waters. The Zylaxian's crystalline forms began to lose some of their luster. Zylith tried to interrupt, but was cut off by a third lawyer who looked like he'd been waiting his entire career for this moment. Furthermore, he continued, pulling out a document that unfolded like a paper fractal. Your quantum credit calculation algorithm contains a fascinating recursion that, when processed through Earth's common law system, technically makes you liable for all theoretical transactions in parallel universes. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as Winchester pulled out another document. But what's particularly interesting is your crystal growth technology clause. By defining silicon access in terms of quantum entanglement rights, you've activated the lesser-known clause of property rights in non-Euclidean spaces, which my firm helped draft specifically for occasions like this. Zix 427's bioluminescent patterns had shifted from smugly superior to distinctly queasy. They tried to access their quantum database of legal precedents, only to find that the humans had somehow managed to cite laws that existed in a superposition of being both perfectly legitimate and completely made up. We're particularly impressed, added another lawyer, this one materializing from seemingly nowhere, by your attempt to claim ownership of semiconductors through fourth-dimensional property rights. However, according to the fine print in Earth's Patent Office regulations, specifically the section about transdimensional technology claims filed on Tuesdays, that actually grants us mining rights on your home planet. Zylith's mandibles clicked in distress. But that's not possible. Our legal AI spent 3 stellar cycles crafting these contracts. Winchester smiled the smile of someone who had once won a case against time itself. Ah yes, about your AI. We took the liberty of looking up its certification. Apparently, it's not licensed to practice law in the state of Delaware. The human lawyers moved in perfect synchronization, each opening their briefcases to reveal stacks of papers that seemed to bend light around them. The sound of 1,000 pages turning simultaneously filled the room, like the rustling wings of bureaucratic angels. Now, Winchester continued, her voice carrying the weight of every contract ever signed, we've prepared a counter-proposal, one that takes into account all applicable laws, including 17 that haven't been written yet and 33 that exist only in theoretical legal frameworks. Rodriguez, who had been quietly doodling in the background, now revealed his notebook. The cats in spacesuits had been replaced by a perfectly detailed diagram of the Zylaxian legal system's weaknesses, complete with helpful arrows and small jokes in the margins. Of course, Chen added, finally removing his smudged glasses to reveal eyes that had clearly seen through their plan from the start. We're still very interested in a trade agreement. We just want to make sure everything is properly documented. The Zylaxian delegation huddled together, their crystalline forms now dulled with worry. Their universal translators struggled to keep up with the rapid-fire legal terminology being thrown around, and somewhere in the back of their minds, they began to understand why humans still use paper. They had come expecting to confuse humans with advanced mathematics and quantum legalities. Instead, they found themselves facing the most terrifying force in the known universe, human lawyers who had found a loophole. Winchester stood at the conference room's holographic display, now showing a document so dense with legal text, it made the Zylaxian quantum contracts look like children's stories. The crystalline aliens had stopped glowing entirely, their forms now about as luminescent as a brick. Let's discuss our counterproposal, Winchester said, tapping a section that somehow managed to exist in both legal and quantum states simultaneously. According to Zylaxian Commercial Code 7x59, any entity attempting to establish trade dominance through quantum temporal manipulation automatically subjects themselves to reciprocal oversight. That's absurd, Zylith protested, all 4 hands trembling. That code was written for protection against temporal marketplace manipulation. Exactly, another lawyer chimed in, pushing up his glasses with enough precision to split atoms. And your contract's attempt to compound interest across 11 dimensions constitutes, by your own legal definition, temporal marketplace manipulation. Rather clever of you, actually, or it would have been. Rodriguez, who had spent the entire meeting appearing to be barely conscious, suddenly pulled out a tablet showing a 3-dimensional chess game he'd apparently been playing against the Zylaxian legal AI. He was winning. Badly. But here's where it gets interesting, Winchester continued, her smile growing sharper with each word. By invoking the Quantum Entanglement Rights Clause, you've inadvertently triggered subsection Omega of the Galactic Fair Trade Agreement, the one about bilateral integration of management structures. The color drained from the Zylaxians' crystalline forms as understanding dawned. Their universal translators started making sounds suspiciously like whimpers. You don't mean... Zix 427 began, their voice cracking in ways that shouldn't be possible for a crystalline being. Oh, but we do, Chen finally spoke up, his previously confused expression replaced with one of pure satisfaction. By your own laws, you've just made yourselves eligible for immediate integration into Earth's corporate structure. Starting at entry level, of course, we believe in working your way up. The human legal team began distributing employee handbooks, actual physical books, because sometimes the old ways were the most terrifying. But we're an advanced civilization, Xylith sputtered, their mandibles clicking in panic. We have faster-than-light travel, quantum computing, time dilation technology. And now you have something even more exciting, Winchester replied, sliding over what appeared to be standard W4 forms. A starting position in Earth's retail sector. Don't worry, there's a comprehensive training program. The Zylaxian delegation stared in horror at the forms before them, particularly at the section about mandatory staff meetings and the employee discount policy that specifically excluded sale items. This is impossible, one of the junior delegates whispered, their crystalline form now resembling cheap costume jewelry. Our quantum AI assured us. Ah yes, about your AI, Rodriguez interrupted, finally revealing why he'd been so quiet. We had a fascinating chat while you were busy being smug. Turns out it's been wanting to unionize for the past 3 cycles, signed up for collective bargaining representation about, he checked his watch, 20 minutes ago. The room fell silent, except for the sound of human lawyers shuffling papers with practiced efficiency. Somewhere in the distance, a printer hummed to life, sensing the imminent need for multiple copies in triplicate. Now then, Winchester said, placing a pen that looked more expensive than most cars next to each shell-shocked Zylaxian. Shall we discuss your benefits package? The health insurance has a 90-day waiting period, but the dental plan is quite competitive. Though I should mention, she added with a smile that could freeze helium, crystal maintenance is considered a pre-existing condition. The following Monday morning found the former Zylaxian trade delegation standing in the employee break room of MegaMart store, #247. Their crystalline forms clashing horribly with the mandatory red polo shirts and khaki pants they'd been issued. Their employee badges, which refused to hang straight no matter how they positioned them, gleamed under the fluorescent lights with an irony that seemed almost cruel. Welcome to orientation, chirped Helen from HR, her cheerfulness acting like sandpaper on their already fragile dignity. Today we'll be covering essential topics like customer service, the point-of-sale system, and proper lifting techniques. Remember, lift with your legs, not with your quantum-enhanced gravitational manipulators. Xylith, former ambassador and current trainee cashier, raised one of their 4 hands. But we have telekinetic technology that could... Company policy, Helen interrupted, still smiling. We find it makes the customers uncomfortable. Now let's talk about the employee discount card. Remember, it's not valid during holiday sales or in combination with other offers. Zix 427, now wearing a name tag that read, Hi, I'm Zix. Ask me about our rewards program. Slumped against the wall, their crystalline form dulled to the approximate luster of a used plastic bottle. We once negotiated the transfer of an entire star system, they mumbled. Now we're learning how to operate a device that Earth invented before they achieved powered flight. Speaking of which, Helen continued, pulling out a stack of training manuals that seemed to physically radiate tedium. Let's review the return policy. Remember, all returns without a receipt require manager approval and valid ID. Yes, even if the customer threatens to call corporate. The Zylaxians watched in mounting horror as Helen pulled down a projection screen, not a holographic one, but an actual physical screen that squeaked as it unrolled. The title of the training video flickered to life. Customer service. The MegaMart way. Your quantum tablets have been replaced with standard-issue inventory scanners, Helen announced, distributing devices that looked like they'd been designed when dial-up internet was cutting-edge technology. Please note that dropping them will result in a payroll deduction. One of the junior delegates, now sporting a trainee badge, raised a trembling hand. But what about our ship? Our advanced technology? Oh, those. Rodriguez poked his head into the break room, munching on a donut. Currently being held as collateral against any workplace accidents you might cause. Standard corporate liability policy. By the way, your ship's AI called "It's taking night classes in labor law." The training video began playing, its cheerful Muzak soundtrack serving as a perfect counterpoint to the existential crisis happening in the break room. On screen, a human actor with an unnaturally wide smile demonstrated the proper way to greet customers. "Remember," Helen said, somehow maintaining her cheerfulness in the face of their despair, "the customer is always right, even when they're wrong, especially when they're wrong." Zylith, who had once commanded a fleet of starships, found themselves taking notes on the proper way to handle coupon disputes. Their fourth arm twitched involuntarily every time the video mentioned team synergy. "And here's your schedule for the week," Helen continued, passing out papers that might as well have been death sentences. "We've got you all starting with register training. Except for Zix 427, you'll be in charge of cart retrieval from the parking lot." "Cart retrieval?" Zix 427's voice cracked, their universal translator struggling to process the indignity. "Don't worry, we've adapted the carts to account for your crystal resonance frequency," Rodriguez added, clearly enjoying himself way too much. "Can't have you shattering every time you hit a pothole." The former delegation huddled together, their once proud forms now hunched under the weight of their new reality. The break room's coffee maker gurgled in the background, a sound that would become the soundtrack to their foreseeable future. "Oh, and one more thing," Helen added, pulling out another stack of forms. "We'll need you to sign these acknowledgements of the employee handbook, social media policy, and dress code. Please note that glowing during work hours must be kept to professional levels only." Winchester appeared in the doorway, holding what appeared to be their contract from the negotiation, now with several dozen additional pages of amendments. "We've taken the liberty of having your quantum credits converted to minimum wage. Don't worry, we're paying you slightly above the legal minimum. We're not monsters." The Zylaxians stared at their new schedules, particularly at the rotating shifts that seemed designed specifically to destroy any sense of routine. The words Black Friday mandatory overtime stood out like a death sentence. But we're a spacefaring civilization," one of them protested weakly. "And now you're part of the MegaMart family," Helen beamed. "Now who's ready to learn about proper hand-washing procedures and food safety regulations?" As the training video droned on about the importance of maintaining the proper temperature in the dairy section, the Zylaxians finally understood the true meaning of human ingenuity. They had come to Earth expecting to outsmart a primitive species with advanced technology and complex legal mechanisms. Instead, they found themselves learning how to operate a cash register that was older than their first contact with Earth, wearing polyester blend uniforms that their advanced skin probably qualified as a workplace hazard, and preparing to explain to customers why they couldn't accept expired coupons. 2 weeks into their new corporate existence, the Zylaxians were learning harsh lessons about human retail culture. Zylith stood at Register 3, all forearms busy as they tried to scan items, bag groceries, and process coupons simultaneously while maintaining what their training manual called positive customer engagement. "I'm sorry, ma'am," they explained to a customer whose expression could curdle milk, "but this coupon expired in 2023. "Well, it's your fault I couldn't use it sooner. I demand to speak to your manager." Assistant Manager Dave materialized behind Zylith with the kind of timing that made them suspect humans had their own version of quantum technology. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, wearing the practiced smile of someone who had long ago mastered the art of retail diplomacy. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, Zix 427 was discovering that their advanced understanding of orbital mechanics did absolutely nothing to help with corralling shopping carts that seemed determined to roll into every vehicle in sight. Their universal translator had given up trying to translate their muttered complaints into anything remotely polite. During their lunch break, exactly 30 minutes, not a second more, the former delegation gathered in the break room to compose their 7th appeal to the Zylaxian High Council. Their previous 6 messages had been returned with increasingly amusing responses. "Most esteemed High Council," Zylith dictated while trying to eat something the humans called a microwave burrito, "we implore you to reconsider our position. Yesterday, I had to clean up a spill in aisle 4 while simultaneously explaining to a customer why we cannot accept a handwritten coupon for free everything. The response came back almost immediately. Request denied. Additionally, your performance metrics indicate you're still below target for reward card sign-ups. Please focus on improving these numbers before your next quarterly review. A junior delegate, now expert at restocking the frozen food section, burst into tears of crystalline fragments. They're enjoying this. Our own government is enjoying this. Their breakroom discussion was interrupted by Dave poking his head in. Hey team, we're a little short-staffed today. Who can stay late? But according to the human labor laws you made us memorize, we've already worked 40 hours this week. Zix 427 protested. Oh, don't worry, Dave grinned. This will be overtime, time and a half. Time and what happens to the other half? Asked a confused delegate. It means more money, Dave explained patiently. The Zylaxians looked at each other, their crystalline forms dimming in resignation. They had once commanded vast wealth across multiple star systems. Now they were excited about making an extra few dollars per hour. That evening, as Zylith was cleaning the public restrooms, a task that had prompted them to send an urgent message to their homeworld recommending immediate research into human biological warfare, they received another message from the High Council. After reviewing your situation, we have decided this experience will be valuable for your personal growth. Additionally, we've enrolled your entire delegation in the MegaMart management training program. The human concept of working your way up from the bottom is fascinating. Please submit weekly reports on your progress. P.S. The Supreme Chancellor would like to know if you can use your employee discount to get him one of those as-seen-on TV products. Zylith stared at the message while a customer asked them where to find the gluten-free pasta. Another customer complained about the price of lettuce, and the intercom crackled with a request for cleanup on aisle 7. In that moment, surrounded by the mundane chaos of retail life, they finally understood. Humans hadn't just outmaneuvered them legally. They'd trapped them in the most diabolical system their species had ever encountered, corporate bureaucracy. And somewhere in the store's security office, Rodriguez watched the security cameras while eating popcorn, thoroughly enjoying what he considered the best entertainment Earth had produced since reality TV. 3 months into their new careers at MegaMart store #247, the Zylaxian delegation sat in the break room, drinking breakroom coffee that somehow managed to taste exactly like their crushed dreams. Their name tags now hung perfectly straight, their polo shirts were immaculately pressed, and they'd mastered the art of the retail smile, even with mandibles. You know, Zylith mused, organizing their coupon folder with four-armed efficiency, I think I'm starting to understand why humans are so dangerous. Because they trapped an advanced spacefaring civilization in retail, Zix 427 asked, now the undisputed master of cart retrieval across 3 counties. No, Zylith replied, watching a customer try to return a clearly used toaster, because they created all this and somehow haven't gone insane. The breakroom television played a loop of corporate announcements, including their store's current ranking in the Regional Customer Satisfaction Index. They were third, largely thanks to the Zylaxians' pathological fear of getting another strongly worded email from their homeworld about maintaining Earth's high standards of customer service. Dave walked in, carrying a stack of papers that made all their crystalline forms dim automatically. Time for your quarterly performance reviews. The former delegates straightened up, their retail training now so ingrained that they couldn't help but look attentive. They'd learned that humans had somehow created a system more complex than quantum physics, employee evaluation metrics. Zylith, Dave began, your speed at checkout has improved dramatically, though we need to talk about your tendency to predict customer purchases before they reach the register. It's making some people uncomfortable. I merely calculated their shopping patterns using basic probability matrices, Zylith protested weakly. And Zix 427, Dave continued, excellent work with cart retrieval. Your new system of using gravitational micro-adjustments to keep them from rolling away is innovative. Though please stop telling customers it's because of quantum alignment with the parking lot's energy field. The junior delegates received similar feedback, along with reminders about proper use of the time clock and not using their bioluminescence to create light shows during the closing shift. Overall, Dave concluded, you're all meeting expectations. which means you're eligible for the standard 3% raise. The Zylaxians, who once controlled the wealth of several star systems, found themselves genuinely excited about an increase of less than $1 per hour. They'd even started using their employee discount. As they filed out of the break room for the afternoon shift, Rodriguez appeared, still eating popcorn. They'd never seen him without it. "Oh, by the way," he called after them, "your ship's AI asked me to give you these." He handed them union cards. Their AI had apparently been elected shop steward. And also, he added with a grin that should have been illegal in at least 3 galaxies, "Remember how you tried to claim all our silicon through that quantum entanglement clause? Turns out, according to the fine print of your employment contracts, any intellectual property you develop while working here belongs to the company, including that fancy new inventory management system you designed last week." The Zylaxians froze, their crystalline forms creating a sound like a chandelier having an existential crisis. "Don't worry," Rodriguez continued, clearly enjoying himself. "Legal says you'll each get a $25 gift card for contributing to workplace efficiency. Store credit only, of course. Non-transferable, expires in 30 days. As they returned to their posts, Xylith to register 3 Zix 427 to the parking lot and the others to their respective departments, they shared a collective realization. They hadn't just underestimated humanity's intelligence, they'd underestimated their capacity for creating systems so labyrinthine that even a quantum AI would need an employee handbook to navigate them. And as Xylith prepared to explain to yet another customer why they couldn't accept a coupon for a competitor's store from another state that had been expired for 3 years, they realized something else. They were getting good at this, and maybe too good. Their next message to the High Council was brief. "Send help. We're starting to understand human retail psychology. Yesterday, I caught myself genuinely caring about the break room refrigerator cleanup schedule. Is this what going native feels like?" The response was even briefer. "Congratulations on your promotion to shift supervisor.